Hello everyone. This week we're going to be talking about exercise 12, vertebrate evolution, phylum Chordata, and we're going to also talk about a subset of that, vertebrates. So chordates, if you remember from last week, we used this chart. We talked about all of our invertebrates, and now we're going to talk about the vertebrates and the chordates. So they have deuterostome development, and they have four characteristics at some point during their development. They have a postanal tail, they have a notochord, which is a support structure for the dorsal tubular nerve cord, and then they have pharyngeal pouches. These will develop into other things as the organism reaches maturity, but at some point they will have those during development. So we're going to work through this grouping of animals. So first off, you can see that all of the ones we'll be talking about are chordates. So they have those four characteristics that we talked about. First off, we're going to talk about these guys. They are the non-vertebrate chordates. First off is Cephalochordata, the lancelets. These are small animals. They live in shallow water. They keep themselves buried most of the time, but they have that dorsal hollow nerve cord. They have the pharyngeal pouches develop into these pharyngeal slits, and they have a postanal tail. Right? Subphylum Urochordata. These guys are kind of interesting in that the adults are sessile. They're attached filter feeders, but the larvae have all the characteristics of chordates. Right? You've got the dorsal nerve cord, notochord, postanal tail, and they have the pharyngeal pouches during development that become this sort of gill and filtration apparatus. Now we're going to talk about the vertebrates. They have so they've added on some features basically. We have our defining characteristics are they have a skeleton with a vertebral column. So that instead of just a notochord, there is some sort of protection surrounding the entire nerve tube. Right? They have a closed circulatory system. They've got paired appendages, so if there's an appendage on one side, it's also on the other. You might think, what about snakes? Snakes in their evolution used to have legs, so they would still be considered invertebrata. They have efficient respiration and excretion, and they're all adapted to some sort of active lifestyle. The other thing that's going on is you've got a high degree of cephalization. Basically, what that means is your brain and most of the sensory organs are all now concentrated in the head. Right? So vision, taste, hearing are all now in the head, and the brain is controlling everything, and that's located in the head. So we talked about our tunicates and our lancelets, and the next ones we're going to be moving into the vertebrates, and first up are the jawless fishes. So this is superclass AGNATHA. So AGNATHA means no jaw. They have cartilaginous skeletons. So the skeleton's made entirely of cartilage. They don't have lateral fins, so they have fins. You can kind of see it on the top, all right, the dorsal and the ventral side of the body, but they don't have fins on the side. They also do not have jaws, right? They have these discs full of denticles that they can use to grasp things and to pull in food. The only extant representatives we have of these guys now are the hagfish, which is these guys here, and the lamprey. So moving on from our jawless fishes, now we move to the gnathostomes. All right, so gnatha means jaw. So these are all animals that have a jaw. All right, we're going to take a look first at class Chondrichthyes. These are the cartilaginous fishes. So they, excuse the squeak, they have a endoskeleton made entirely out of cartilage. They have true jaws, which are very effective for capturing prey and taking in food. they have paired lateral appendages, meaning that they've got like these pectoral fins and these pelvic fins that come out of the side of the animal. That allows for a lot better control, and they are much more active and better swimmers. They are represented by the sharks, right? Rays, which include skates, and our chimera, which are sometimes called ratfish, which are a deep ocean critter. These are all ectotherms, as were all the previous ones, meaning that their internal body temperature is dependent on what the environmental temperature is. And they all have a two-chambered heart. Next up is superclass OSTEICHTHYES. So oste means bone, and so these are the bony fishes. So they have a skeleton made out of cartilage and not out of bone. So they have that bony endoskeleton. They've got paired fins. So again, these guys are very active swimmers, but those fins are supported by these thin bony rays. These are highly diverse and successful in marine and freshwater. They are extremely successful overall. So if you're thinking of a fish, you're more than likely going to be thinking of a ray-finned fish, excuse me. They have a two-chambered heart as well. Then we're going to talk about, still in OSTEICHTHYES, we've got the lobe-finned fishes. So these are represented by only a few species at this point. So the coelacanths and the lungfishes. They have paired fins, but they have a lobe-like stalk that the fin is attached to. So the fin itself is very similar to the ray-finned fishes, but there is an extra sort of attachment here, right? These guys are interesting in that they are thought to be the intermediary between bony fishes and amphibians during evolution. So we talked about our gnathostomes. Next up are going to be our tetrapods. And basically what being a tetrapod means is that you've got 4 limbs, right? So first of those is amphibia. These are the amphibians. Amphibian means dual life or 2 lives in Greek. They're adapted to living on water and on land, but they still need to reproduce in water. They've got a gelatinous sort of egg that can dry out easily, so there needs to be plenty of water around when these guys reproduce. They also fertilize externally, which water generally helps with that as well. They've got non-scaly skin, all right, that they keep moist with mucus, and they breathe using this skin as well as lungs. So the skin can actually work for oxygen exchange. They have a 3-chambered heart, right? So more so than the one more chamber than the previous, and they are all ectotherms, meaning that their internal temperature varies with the temperature of the environment. And they are represented by the frogs, the newts and salamanders, and then these crazy looking things, the caecilians. So they are these guys basically live underground. They're limbless, and but they are still a amphibian. Excuse me. All right, so we talked about our amphibians. We've only got the amphibians as our tetrapods. So the rest of these guys are all tetrapods. Last ones to talk about are the amniotes. So the big innovation in the amniotes is this amniotic egg. What this allows is it basically puts a layer of protection between the egg and the environment. It creates a little, you can think of it as a tiny little pond inside there to protect the egg. So what you have is you have your embryo. There is a yolk to provide food for it. There is fluid surrounding it to protect it and keep it from dehydrating. So what this allows is for all the amniotic animals to live in places away from the water, right? They can live in dry environments because they don't have to worry about their eggs drying out. First up is class Reptilia. So these are all the reptiles. These guys have thick, dry, scaly, and the big thing is waterproof skin. So their skin will retain moisture, unlike when we're talking about the amphibians. They have well-developed lungs, and they also have 3-chambered hearts. They have these leathery amniotic eggs, and they are also ectotherms. Their body temperature is dependent on whatever the environment's body temperature is. Whatever the environment's temperature is. The environment doesn't have a body temperature. All right. Next up are birds. All right, so these are now accepted to be descended from dinosaurs. So they are literally just highly derived dinosaurs. They have modified scales. We call these feathers. Right? Those can both be for insulation, and there are also such things as flight feathers that help assist with flight. Also assisting with flight is they tend to have light, hollow bones. They also have a fused collarbone and a keeled sternum. So what that's for is attaching large flight muscles. So if you've ever had chicken breast, that is the flight muscles of a chicken, and that attaches on that keeled sternum. They have an amniotic egg. In this case, they've added on a layer. So if you've ever, cooked a chicken egg, you know that it has that hard layer on the outside. And that outer layer of that egg is made mostly of calcium with some protein in it. They show advanced parental care. They will take care of their offspring. And they are endotherms, so they maintain their own body temperature, independent of what is going on in the environment. Then we come to the class that we are part of, class Mammalia. All right, so they all have some kind of hair and mammary glands. The mammary glands are for producing milk to feed their young. Most of them have internal development of the embryo. So an exception to that are the monotremes, so your duck-billed platypuses, and the echidnas. These guys will lay leathery, very reptile-like eggs, and their young will come out of those. They still, however, produce milk for their offspring once they have hatched. They're all endotherms as well, meaning they maintain their body temperature. And we also have the marsupials. So marsupials, what happens during reproduction is that the embryo stays in the mother only for a very short time. It then has to crawl out and get itself into the marsupia, or the pouch that is on the mother, and it will continue to develop in there. The rest of mammals are the marsupial mammals. That includes us, cats, dogs, rats, bats. All of those are placental mammals. Now, they have a placenta that is able to connect the mother with the offspring, with the fetus, and allow it to develop for longer, because you've got gas and nutrient exchange going on through that placenta. So these are going to have longer gestation periods than our marsupials. So, wrapping up, all chordates have 4 characteristics in common. So you've got your dorsal nerve cord, you've got the notochord, postanal tail, and those pharyngeal pouches. Vertebrates, in addition, have an endoskeleton of the vertebral column, closed circulatory system, paired appendages, efficient respiration, high degree of cephalization, and adapted to an active lifestyle. The amniotic egg allows vertebrates to fully colonize land. Mammals feed their young using mammary glands. Placental mammals have a placenta allowing for protracted internal development of the offspring, and vertebrates are highly diverse and have adapted to almost every environment, including whales and dolphins. They've managed to go back to the ocean. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. We'll see you in lab.